Hey, this is Don for Padlock Technologies again, back with another video. Now, if you saw some posts I was putting up on the socials, you know this video is probably going to be on active-active on Fortinet. So active-active HA on Fortinet works a little differently than active-active Palo, works a little differently than active-active on ASAs, and you can't say secure firewall because there's no such thing as active-active. Now, I know there's sonic walls that do active-active as well, but we're talking about the big three here. So we're talking about, mainly when I talk about firewalls, it's going to be either Palo, a Cisco secure firewall, FortiGate, a checkpoint. So I said big three, but I threw checkpoint in there because it's the OG of firewalls, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you in the lab. Have a simple setup. It's going to be active-active FortiGate firewalls. We're going to use GLBP. If you don't know anything about GLBP, I'm going to put a card up here. Go watch that. Go learn the theory of GLBP. And we're going to have two Nexuses and a VPC, right? And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of this design here, because you may see this in the wild somewhere. Now, if you want a more detailed kind of layout, like configuration detail kind of stuff, I'm probably going to make a membership video for that. So if you're not a member, just join, right? Become a member, sponsor the channel, helps me buy more gear so I can do more tutorials, so to help you guys out, learn stuff without having to pay a whole bunch of money, right? Simple, subscription helps me do that for you. And even if you don't want to be a subscriber, membership to the channel, subscribe to the channel, man. Just throw it that way too. Now, the other way is going to help me get the gear faster to do this stuff. But if you just become a regular subscriber and like and share to your network, I appreciate that as well. So with that being said, let's go in here and I'll show you what I did in the lab. All right, so very, very simple lab, man. What I am going to do as well is I will log into FortiGate. Now, it's been a couple of days, so I might not remember what the there we go. About to say I almost didn't remember the IP addresses. So from a FortiGate perspective, we'll just log into there. Let's look at the topology. So we have GLBP at the top, two routers that are active-active 40. So it's active-active pretty much all the way down, right down the entire stack. So the two routers are doing GLBP, which is Gateway Load Balancing Protocol. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description to the video, give you the theory of GLBP. But basically, either one of those routers can answer and forward traffic. It's not your typical active standby HSRP VRRP setup, right? So if my FortiGate, sends it when it does the ARP for the default gateway, which is I believe is 200, 110.254, router 7 or router 8 can answer for it, depending on who you're forwarding. So we go in here just to give you a brief little, what was that? Looks like we have to do, let's see what happens here. Yep, I just updated it, Mac. So let's log out of this. And this is what I hate when you update Mac. Sometimes things get broken. And you just have to go in here and just manually do it, which is all good. Because they have a HTML version and EVE-NG, my favorite labbing tool. Now I know there's CML, there's GNS3. This one starts an argument too, right? You say what's the best, virtual labbing simulator, emulator, whatever you want to call it. People will really get up in your face when you start naming your tools. Some people are EVE-NG fanatics like me. Some people are CML fanatics. Some people are, GNS3 fanatics. Some people are, I think it's PNet Labs or P Labs. They're fanatics about that. Look, it doesn't really matter, dude. At the end of the day, whatever helps you learn the technology, use it. I don't care what it is. So let's get back in here and let's look at router 7. And especially because they added this where you don't really need the client on board. You can just do everything via the cloud or whatever guacamole console background. This is why I like EVE. But anyway, so we go show GLP brief. So you just you know there's GLP running. So router, here's the virtual max, one right here, one right here. The one that says local is local to router 7. The one that says what an active router or AVF, which is active virtual forwarder, that MAC address, this MAC address, virtual MAC address, I assigned it to this router that's in the GLP configurations here. So don't even worry about that. So we know that that's running. Now downstream, we have our active FortiGates. And if we're looking at active FortiGates, real simple to configure here. You just go into your FortiGate systems HA, and then you would configure it like you would normally do. Now I've already got it configured. I did do a FortiGate video active. I think I did an active standby FortiGate video. That may be membership though. So again, you want to see how to do that. Become a member, man. Become a member at the lowest level, and you can watch that video. But as you can see here, if we're looking at the host names, even though I have priority, even though it says secondary, that's not secondary in terms of like passive. It's secondary in terms of, you know, from a management perspective, because both of these are forwarded, right? So if we look into, if I remember this, I'm doing this straight off of memory too. I think it's execute, manage. I could be wrong. There's it at HA manage. There it is. And then 0 login. So basically what this command is going to do is it's going to allow me to get into the secondary console. So once you see on the left hand side says active FGT1. Once I do this command, it's going to ask me for my password because I'm using the admin username. It's basically saying go into the secondary with this username of admin. It's almost like when you try to SSH from Linux or a Mac machine, you SSH root at whatever, sort of similar to this. So we'll go into here, right? And then it's admin, and then you're going to see the console change. So there you're going to see the console change. And if I do a get system session list, you see some sessions up in there, right? And that's one of my sessions, my TCP sessions right here, right? This is SSL or HTTPS going to some website here. So I'm load balancing the sessions. If I were to get out of this and then do the same gets, now I'm back into my primary, so to speak. If I do the same command, system sessions list, you'll see the same thing. So now, why I say this works a little bit different, because active it doesn't load balance all the traffic. It's mainly TCP traffic. And then from a UTM standpoint, that's what you're technically load balancing, like load balancing UTM features on a FortiGate, for the most part. But you can have multiple FortiGates in here. Now, where people mess up, why you don't really see this in the wild, is where people mess up at, they try to do the load balancing and they don't factor in like, what if one of my firewalls go down? So what they'll do is size this in a manner of, okay, I only need half of the resources because I'm going to use the other firewall to load balance the other half, right? So they really downgrade the firewall thinking that the active is going to work. Then the primary, one of the firewalls go down, let's say 2, one of the firewalls go down, and now the other box has 100% of the load when it was only sized for like 50% of the load. And now you got issues. This is why you don't see active like that in the wild, because people tend to not size the firewall correctly. And then now you have sessions dropping on the other firewall because you didn't size it for 100% of the load. So if you're going to do this, don't do that. All right. Now, from a policy standpoint, you know what type of person I am. I like centralized NAT. When I figured out what it was, when I figured out what centralized NAT was, I kind of did that from that point forward. Before I figured out what centralized NAT was, it was a little confusing for me. I used to do the NAT inside the firewall policy. Let's do the new layout. Wait for that to come up. So I used to do the NAT inside the firewall policy, which it's okay. It gives you everything to look at in one place. but I kind of like, I took a liking to centralizing that because it was sort of like on the, Palo Alto or secure firewall or the checkpoint where your NAT rule is separate from the firewall rule, which I like because it's less confusing. So that's what that comes down to. Now we're gonna go to our Nexus switch, and you know what I like doing on a Nexus switch. We're doing our typical VCP, so VPC brief. Now what I did was a little different here. So I have VLAN 10, VLAN 11. So VLAN 11 is going downstream to these, boxes down here, which this is kind of in the way. Let me see if I can make this. All right. So there's two boxes down here, Windows 8 boxes that are just, obviously we're getting out to the internet and I'll get back into my normal console. Hopefully that works because I don't like using the cloud console for the Windows boxes so much or the Guacamole console. But VLAN 10 is downstream. So if we look at our VLAN 10 here, this is, and this is why I kind of don't like Guacamole sometimes. It does this nonsense. It is what it is. So we look at VLAN 10 or VLAN 11. As you can see, we got a VIP going on here downstream. That's the default gateway for the boxes downstream. I gave it a virtual MAC so we don't have to worry about the L3 to L2 rewrite. We don't have to worry about that because it's a virtual MAC. And then I also did it on VLAN 10, which is going up to the FortiGates. I'm not running any routing protocol, so it's all static routes from my point of view. So if you look at VLAN 10, so here's VLAN 10. Now, surprisingly, I didn't do any authentication on the VLAN 11, but whatever. And then this is the VIP, right? So downstream in the FortiGate, if you look from a routing perspective, static routes, you can see my 10 network goes to the VIP, right? You will see this in the wild. I'm just be honest. You will see this in the wild, or you'll see some type of dynamic routing protocol with the port channel, and then you're doing your layer 3 router command in your VPC so that you don't decrement the value, and then you can form the peering between the two VCP peers. That's a little trick for you for somebody that's trying to do routing with VPC. If you're doing stuff like OSPF or any type of dynamic routing protocol, and you know the TTL value is 1, well, if it decrements the value, especially you'll see this in OSPF a lot. People will do port channels and then OSPF down to VPC, and then they wonder why one of the peers aren't showing up. Well, it's because probably going over the VPC link, for one, you want to minimize that traffic. Number two, it decremented the value from 1 to 0, so it just dropped the packet's going out. So you have to use that layer 3 router command to not decrement that value, and then you'll have the neighborship come up. If you want to see a video about that, let me know in the comments. I will make a video specifically about layer 3 router command in VPC. But since we're using static routes, I'm just pointing it to the VIP. And then if we look at our VPC commands, we'll run section VPC. You will see peer gateway, peer switch, the whole nine. So technically, the second peer in the VPC could technically answer and forward the traffic. So we're all good there. You do not see the layer 3 router command in here because I'm not running dynamic protocols. So with that being said, let's close out of this. Not close out of this. You can see how many labs I literally got in this thing. Go back in here. And log out. Now I will say this. A lot of people ask me if, I can export my labs and then, make them available. And the answer to that is, I would love to do that. To members, though, because I put a lot of work into getting these labs up and running and all that good stuff. So if I'm going to export these labs and give them to people, I'm going to give them to my members first so they don't have to recreate all this themselves. They really just got to worry about getting the images, and that's something you got to do. but at least you'll have the lab so you can just easily start going. All right. Again, I would only do that for members. So we go up in here and look, we're NBA. Just so to validate, because I know I'm not one of those people that will say, uh, "Oh yeah, it's working," but technically it's not working. I just show this on the screen. So let's pick a website. I'll go to Google first, and I'll just say NCAA and see what comes up. So clearly, you see it's working, right? Because these are websites that I would not technically um, wouldn't be able to go to if this wasn't working. So clearly, I'm getting out to the internet. Now, while that's doing that and loading, let's go. I can't go to the routers because I was going to show you the NAT translations just to verify just so you can see it. But technically, what I can do is go back in here. Again, I love the fact that you can just go right to the CLI uh, from within the GUI. So here's our sessions here. And then if I were to go, since I'm doing session pickup, if I go to the other FortiGate, go to the other FortiGate, do the same command, and you should see those sessions sync over. See? So this is what that session pickup command does for anybody that wanted to know what it does. Get out of here. And you know, my last but not least, we got to do the ping test always. So that's pinging all the way out to Google. So that is a little brief look at active. Again, if you want me to do this breakdown like from scratch, from GLB, active, the VPC on Nexus, all the way downstream, you know, put a comment in the video. Again, that video is going to be for my members, so I'm going to show you each and every command, all that stuff. We'll do live troubleshooting and all that. If you want to see that, just let me know. And let's get out of this lab here, and then I'll just review what you just saw. All right, so that was the active setup. I only wanted to show it to you from a topology standpoint, from a design perspective, because this is something you could see. Now, most of the time, you're going to probably see active standby with VPC, but you could see active. And I'm saying active, not with just FortiGate. You can see clustering with Cisco secure firewalls. You can see active with the ARP load sharing mechanism for Palo Altos. You can see active with Cluster XL, which is checkpoints HA configuration. So for you guys that are worrying about design and like what would you see in the field, I'm gonna start doing a lot of those too. Like what would you technically see in the design from the field? Because again, when you become a config ninja, you kind of get stuck in the configs and you don't really understand the why you're configuring it, and that's the missing piece, right? It's great to be, you know, a savant at the CLI. It's wonderful. You can pull things out your brain and you know how to do all that stuff. But if you don't know why you're doing it, you're kind of a half engineer, right? You know, I can tell you to config this and you know how to do it. But if I said, here's a bunch of gear, here's the end state, you say, I only know how to configure. I can't conceptualize the design. You're not going to go that far in this field. So anyway, this is Don from Padlock Technologies. If you haven't already, don't forget to share, comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want more in-depth design conversation or just in-depth configuration videos, consider becoming a member to the channel. Because when I start putting out those videos, you'll get those videos first. They'll be hot and fresh, and they may just stay membership videos. I might not release them to the public. Then if you get to the higher level, then you join the inner circle. That's when we really start talking about, you know, how to further your career, design considerations. If you got a design that, you know, you're kind of on the fence about and you need some help looking at it, hey, I review designs all the time. Maybe some people review designs. This is an engineer helping engineer kind of situation. Also telling you how to get to the next level, which is on the pre-sale side of things, which is you're closer to the money on that side. And I can show you how to get into that as well. Again, Don from Padlock Technologies again. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you and have a nice day.